not to be, but I guess we do, because they really try to test you. And I'm not going to be put in a position for that. So I guess in a way you can say I am harder somewhat on my own race.
I am not a politician. I've never been a politician. But I do know politics.
What's the dream?
Okay, the dream is to have the centerpiece, the theater as a centerpiece, and giving people a place to go have dinner after they leave the theater or before they come to the theater, and just walk along the street and do some light shopping, or just be in an atmosphere that was Jacksonville in the 1920s and the 30s.
There are 150 black police officers in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. That's not to say that there have never been any black cops, because there have always been. The difference between what was 20 years ago and what is now is that there are more of them, and they can arrest white people. Detective Tommy Mays works in the Fugitive Division. He started some 32 years ago, back in 1955. Officer Ken Jefferson works the Patrol Division, mainly the south side of Jacksonville. He's been on the force for only 2 years, and he's a Jacksonville native. Officer Ron Higgins, he was in the Services Division, but he served 7 years in patrol and will be returning to the street soon. He's been on the force for 10 years, is a New Jersey native, but attended schools here in Jacksonville, mainly Stanton High School. Officer Mays, why did you decide to become a police officer?
That was a lifelong ambition that I had, beginning in preschool. I had a little motorcycle with a policeman on it, and that motivated me and instilled in my mind that I wanted to become a police officer. And when I had the opportunity, I accepted it. And since that time, some 32 years of it, I've enjoyed it. And it has been a real pleasure for me to serve my community and the people in my district. And when I first came on, we were just allowed to patrol only in the black community. We're not allowed to arrest whites. But that didn't last very long after I came on. That policy soon changed. And also when I came on, blacks were not allowed to take promotion exams. That also didn't last very long after I came on. That soon changed, where the blacks was allowed to take promotion exams.
Officer Jefferson, what is it about the job? Does it scare you or does it excite you?
Well, there is danger in the job. There's nothing to hide about that. But this is the type of job that you got to really love to do good at. You got to be willing to, in a sense, put yourself on the line for the protection and welfare of others. And with that in mind, with that being president over everything, I'm willing to do that. The danger of the job doesn't really scare me to the point whereas I want to leave, I want to run away. Yes, I want to protect myself from fire. If that came about, I'm not going to stand there and be a hero. There are a lot of dead heroes, but it's a job where you've got to be willing to put yourself in the line for someone else.
Officer Mays, you've been on the force for 32 years, and you have seen the image of the black policeman and of policemen in general. Given the image of the black community toward policemen in general, what's your view of the situation from the inside?
It has changed considerably. Naturally, time will bring about a change, and the attitude of the black community toward police officers, black officers in general, has changed a whole lot. Now, when I first came on, the thing in terms of we was only regimented to the black community, they looked up to the police officers, and it was well respected. So it is still that way now.
What is it about the job as you see it now? What's the biggest problem facing police officers on the street? I guess to you first, Officer Mays.
The criminal elements out there now, I think the drug problem, that's about the biggest problem we face police officers out there right now.
Officer Jefferson?
It would be drug-related, along with the number of youth carrying guns these days.
Officer E?
Drug-related youth, and also you still have a lot of family problems due to drug relations, so far as the youth, the wife or the husband being on crack cocaine.
Officer Jefferson, what's the difference between a cop and a police officer?
Well, I think a more professional word is police officer as opposed to a cop. I don't even know what the word, well, the cop is a derivative of citizens on patrol. I think that's where it came from. But we're more than just citizens on patrol. We're actually professional law enforcement officers out to do a very decent job for the community.
We took a ride with Officer Retha Smith. She is a veteran of 13 years. Also distinctive is that she is the first of only 13 black women presently on the force. She patrols the north side of Jacksonville.
I find that we have more problems somewhat. For one thing, it is challenging in itself for anyone. And being a female and black, I think it's going to be more, we face more problems. It's more of a challenge from day to day.
Any difference between the ladies that come on the force, that have been on the force in the last 2 to 3 years, and in deference to what it was like when you came on 13 years ago?
Oh, yes. I think the atmosphere is more lax for them. I think we're getting used to females being on the department. It's now just taken every day as another officer coming on, not look at as a female coming on the department.
What's going on in the communities that you travel? How do they react to you?
Well, they still look at me as amazing. When I'm traveling, cars will pull up alongside of me and look to see if there's really a female driving that car, you know, as if to say. And the black, I get a lot of problems from. They keep questioning, you've forgotten where you come from, because they will not. They expect you to deviate from the laws, to do favors from, because you are black and you're in a black neighborhood, so therefore you shouldn't treat us as the law says. Because they really try to test you. And I'm not going to be put in a position for that. So I guess in a way you can say I am harder somewhat on my own race.
To say that things have changed around the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office would be an understatement. From 1980 to 87, the number of black police officers has risen from 65 to 130. But even getting to this point has not been an easy job. One of those responsible for making sure that black officers increase in number on the Jacksonville Police Force has been Officer Anthony Rogers, president of the Brotherhood of Police Officers. Anthony, why is it necessary to have a black police organization?
Fred, black police organizations are necessary due to the fact of the unique problems that blacks have in law enforcement, whereas there are human and civil rights violations that are committed by cities and police departments all over the country.
But this is 1988 now. Why should we have that, especially within the unit, the force that is responsible for maintaining law and order?
Well, the administrations change in various departmental agencies, but some of those concepts that people have not changed. And therefore, in not only Jacksonville, but other cities as well, discrimination still exists in police departments.
Now, you're not a union, you're an organization, that's correct?
That's right. We're an organization that deals with our members' human and civil rights. We will challenge anyone that will violate those rights.
What has been the reaction to officers? You've been on the force now for a decade and a half. What's been the reaction of young officers just coming in to what, of course, has been happening for years and years on the force, to things that you continue to talk about?
A lot of the young guys can't believe that this exists. A lot of them grew up and attended integrated high schools and then grew up in integrated neighborhoods. And they don't think that discrimination is as now as it was in the 60s. But not only, like I say, in our department, but other police departments as well, there are certain units and sections that blacks are not allowed to work in.
The stress of police life is the same for any cop, no matter what the color. But as with all other things in life in the South, in America, when you're black, they seem to be noticed more. This would seem a most unlikely neighborhood for the business and legislative offices of one of the state's most influential political leaders. But for dentist and State Senator Arnett Girardo, he would have it no other way. The senator, as he is called by some, was born in Jacksonville in 1929. Arnett Girardo is a dentist by trade, Howard University graduate who says he's most proud of his input in the civil rights movement in Jacksonville. He married Florida Junior College instructor Matilda Carolyn Lee of New Hill, North Carolina in 1966. They have 2 children, Arnetta and Arnett Elias Jr. Girardo entered the Florida House of Representatives in 1976. After reapportionment, he won seat 7 in the Florida Senate. He became the first elected black state senator in a century. Senator Carrie Meeks of Miami is his peer, having won her seat without opposition in 1982. That same year, he became chairman of the Duval delegation. He is not necessarily a part of the inner circle of power in Tallahassee, but his seniority has earned him respect. His politics are termed liberal by the white community, but quite conservative by some blacks. He supports enthusiastically any candidate he endorses and maintains as close a ties with individuals and organizations that support him. But his life is politics, although, as he will tell you, his love is civil rights. But we talk with him about what he knows best. Was consolidation good or bad for Jacksonville blacks?
For Jacksonville, it's terrible.
Why did we agree to it?
Because we were being led by people who thought it was good for us, and therefore they made an error, but we respected the people. And therefore you find it, sort of difficult to talk against your father when you know your father's wrong. Now what had happened was, Miss Salad Mathis, who was looked upon as being one of our advanced people in the civil rights movement, she didn't participate that much in the movement because she came on toward the end of it, but she was certainly an elegant lady. She had been a school teacher. She was looked upon as being knowledgeable. And she and Mr. Sulzbach and Earl Johnson and some others sold to the black community that the best thing for the city of Jacksonville and the black community would be consolidated government. Rutledge Pearson and I and Rodney Hurst and some of the other civil rights activists didn't agree, Clanzo Brown, but we did not feel that we were that sure about it to the extent that we would try to embarrass those whom we respected greatly. So as a result, we did not challenge it except to say we don't think it's good for us. And the reason why was because we had 46% of the city's population at the time. One more election with the rate of growth of the city of Jacksonville and the flight from the inner city by whites, we would have had at least 50%, and therefore we would have had an equal participation in government.
Any changes on the horizon? This is now 1988. Any changes on the horizon to that?
Yes, there are changes on the horizon. If we fall asleep, we'll be back where we were 100 years ago in 1887, if we are not careful by 1992. That's the main reason I'm running for re-election. If it were not for the reapportionment of 1990 and someone currently present that I felt beyond a question could be re-elected to this seat, I would probably consider not running this time.
Controversial point that's being considered in a lot of corners of Jacksonville, both black and white. The at-large system was the carryover, as I understand it, from the city commissioner form of government we had before, county commission form of government we had before, to what we have now. Are we going to keep that? A lot of folks say that it's detrimental to blacks to have at-large councilmen.
That was one of the compromises that had to be made in order to get the reapportionment, whereby we were assured of 3 council districts that we could get adequate black representation. In other words, just to redistrict into single-member districts in the council was not assurance of black participation. It depends on how that those districts are carved. And as a result, as you can see, if we did not have blacks on that council, on those councils in the past years where reapportionment occurred, we would probably not even be participating now. You can take a community and divide it right down the center, just as we did District 9, as you recall, in District 11, and deny the process because we didn't get a school board member elected, the second school board member elected, until after I undid the gerrymander that was done at the time of consolidation.
Well, now that we're on the point of view, why did you decide to go to the state legislature instead of city council?
I didn't decide to go to either. I had pretty much resigned myself that I was finished with the civil rights movement. I was finished with public office. I was going back to my dental practice. And however, in 1969, Wendell Holmes decided to run for the school board, and of course he needed support, so I headed up his campaign along with Reese Marshall. And since I had good experience and background in it, I did just that. I put out the necessary placards and everything, I think, which made it possible for him to be elected. After that, the reapportionment of 1970 is the thing that really did the trick, inasmuch as I had decided to go into dentistry full-time. I was active in the dental association and everything full-time. I was an officer in the Academy of Dentistry here. When all of a sudden here comes a reapportionment, and several prominent blacks, such as L.C. Lucas, Frank Hampton, Eric Simpson, and several others had indicated they were going to run for office because this would be the first time that there had been no incumbents. Mm-hmm. You see, because before that, I had championed the cause and had been the treasurer for Lewis Carter, who ran in 1968. And the time was not ripe yet. He just could not get the support from the non-black community because they were at large. And as a result, in 1970, when none of those persons ran for office, then the morning before the final day of filing, I decided that we had to have a black to run, because if we did not run at a time when there were no incumbents, then the white community would assume that we were really not concerned with participation.
You're running for re-election to the Senate. In effect, when you ran for Senate the first time, it was reapportionment that enabled you to run for the Senate seat you now hold.
It was reapportionment which required that I run, because I was going to get out of the public life at that time, because I had already served 6 years, and I was going to get out of the out of the House the next year, and therefore I was going to be finished. However, when they reapportioned in 1982, 81 session, 82 session, then I didn't even consider running for office, because I knew that it would be 1984 before we would be able to, before a black would be able to have a chance in the district that was created. But the Supreme Court reversed all of that when they required all of the senators to run for re-election, not just the even numbers, but all. When that happened, I had no choice. I had to run.
Who's going to succeed you?
Wish I knew that.
Can anybody? Do you believe anybody can succeed?
You're darn right. I'm not indispensable. If you don't believe it, let something happen to me tomorrow. The question is, can somebody succeed me with enough knowledge about what's happening to be really effective? And I had hoped to have had several young men, especially black young men or women, to come forth and work with me in order to learn as much as they could about how the legislative process works, so that I could more or less guide them along and feel comfortable and say, okay, I'm ready to get out, take it over. If that person were here today, I'd do that today.
A couple of charges here about the senator. Some say one of the reasons he keeps running, or he's in office, is that he really doesn't want anybody else to have the kind of influence that he has. Valid, invalid? And why
I think that it's invalid because I've never been egotistical in my entire life.
You're a politician, though. We aren't all politicians egotistical to an extent.
No, I'm not a politician. I'm a dedicated civil rights person.
All right.
I am not a politician. I've never been a politician. But I do know politics, and there's a big difference. When you are a civil rights person, your entire energies are always directed, and that's what comes foremost in your mind above all else, the commitment to the group as a whole.
Charge. Senator Dorado, for the most part, in the major elections, has always endorsed the white candidate.
Give me specifics.
I guess one of the specifics being Jake Godbold.
Jake Godbold, Arnett Dorado, along with thousands of other black Jacksonvillians, supported Jake Godbold when he ran the first time. Now, the way that our laws are set up, Jake Godbold could not succeed himself except once. It's almost impossible to defeat an incumbent unless that incumbent has done something like Governor Martinez has, stubbed his toe. Jake Godbold had come back and had fulfilled almost every campaign promise and non-campaign promise to the black community, where they had become full-time partners in the political system. You don't go against someone that you have supported that way.
I'm going to give you a list of names here, most of them you know, and just ask your opinion about them. Jake Godbold.
Jake Godbold, excellent politician. One of the persons that I said when he ran against Lou Brantley that the people of Jacksonville wouldn't elect him because they don't want any country bumpkin representing them. He sounded as if he were from the backwoods of Florida. But Jake Godbout fooled us all. He turned out to be one of the best mayors of all times. I might mention to you that, and do a comparison. Jake Godbout did on a local level more or less what Lyndon Johnson did on a national level. He brought blacks into participation.
Hans Tansler.
Unfortunately well-respected, looked good, but it was all surface.
Hayden Burns.
Hayden Burns was one of the worst things that ever happened to black people in this community because he had this city by totally in his grips. And he used the black vote, but he never gave anything to the black people.
Bob Graham.
One of the finest governors that the state has ever known. He is now a United States Senator, and I predict that he will be the President of the United States before he's 70 years old.
Bob Martinez.
A waste. One of the greatest disappointments ever. Unfortunately,
Now, you're not saying that because he's Republican, you're Democrat, are you?
I'm about to explain to you. Unfortunately, we did not listen to the people from Tampa. He lost his own community, and he had been the mayor of the city of Tampa. The legislators and elected officials of that area were trying to tell us, look out. He's not what he's talking about. And I'm not talking about blacks. I'm talking about blacks, whites, and others who lived under Bob Martinez in Tampa.
What are we going to remember about Senator Arnett Girardeau? What's going to be on their epitaph when it's all said and done? What are they going to say about Arnett Girardeau?
I really don't know. I won't even be prophetic and try to say, I hope that they would say this. I just don't know. I'm not seeking any recognition, but I do know this. A person who has lived and has participated, the name has to come up every once in a while. The names are important, but in the final analysis, it's what you did while you lived. It's not important how much recognition you get after it's over.
The Ritz first opened its doors in 1929. This 600-seat auditorium was once a popular haven for Jacksonville's black theatergoers. The Ritz and the surrounding La Villa area were once the shopping and entertainment mecca for Jacksonville's black community. And if the dreams of professional dancer Anthony Patterson come to life, this 60-year-old legacy and Jacksonville historic landmark will live once again. Anthony, why are you going to do it?
I think it's important that a person's past be a part of their future. And out of 4 black theaters that were in this community, this is the only one that's still standing. And I think it's important to the future of the black community, as well as the community of Jacksonville, that we restore this theater and give the community of Jacksonville some kind of arts and entertainment district. We desperately need that kind of place.
Now, as far as I know, you were not a part of the generation that the Ritz is a part of. I mean, I think you were about 18 or so when the Ritz was already closed. Why the interest by you? You mentioned, of course, the past, but why the interest by you?
I think a lot of young people in Jacksonville want to know what happened and where the black community was in Jacksonville. And people like myself did not know until you start talking to old-timers what used to go on here. And I think my sense of preservation and my sense of arts and entertainment just led me to this gorgeous building. And I think this building lends itself perfectly to what we're trying to do. And also the area that this building will fit nowhere else in Jacksonville. It belongs right here.
Now, what about the building itself? As we look at it today, the marquee is the landmark.
Yes.
It's the thing that reminds us of the Ritz.
Yes.
What about the theater that is worth saving?
The theater, if like we said before, is one of the only black theaters that are still remaining in the city. But in terms of the state of Florida, this is the first time that historic buildings that belong to a community of black people has been preserved. Also, this building, the neon sign that you see, the Ritz, is the first neon sign in the state of Florida. This building has a lot of history outside just the sign, but what it stood for in terms of people not going to other theaters, and they had to come here. So that history with the Art Deco, the Egyptian, the Mediterranean style that's in there is a part of the past of the black community. It goes all the way back to Africa in terms of when they opened King Tut's Tomb in 1922, 23. All the architectural styles took on the Egyptian style, and that's where the building get a lot of its Art Deco-ish and Egyptian style from.
Now, you know, as we would look inside the theater itself and we see what kind of repair it's in now,
Yes.
what basically is inside the theater at this point? What will we see when we go inside?
Okay, basically what you will see is nothing. The building was rented to some church individuals, and they took all the cast iron seats out of it and put them in the alley, and of course a wise person came by and sold the cast iron for money. But what we plan to do is replace, we have some idea of what the seating was like, and we want to have very comfortable seating, so we're losing some of the seats that were originally in there from the 600 back to 564 seats, so we can have comfortable seats. But basically the balcony sit at about 200 people, and it had a small stage, which is about a 10-foot stage, and we're adding a lot to make it a performing arts area instead of a movie house that it was in its heyday in 1929, 30s, and 40s.
Now, what's going to be the difference between the Ritz here and the Florida Theater across town, and of course what's being done already at the Civic Auditorium? What's the difference?
The difference is the Ritz is a medium-sized house, and it'll be a medium-priced house for the community to afford to fill a house and to make money on their art. The Florida Theater sits about 2,000 people. The Civic Auditorium sits over 3,200 seats. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a framework for getting small organizations to have a place to perform and have a crowd. Also, the size of our auditorium is sort of different because of the size of our stage is a lot larger than the Florida Theater stage. The wing space is a lot larger, and the backstage space is a lot larger. So what we're adding is adequacy in the art, what is necessary for the art to be presented well as to be received well by the audience.
Now, as I look down Davis Street now, I see one picture, and we're not just talking about the renovation of the Ritz, we're talking about really the Ritz Theater District, which is this entire section. What's the dream?
Okay, the dream is to have the centerpiece, the theater as a centerpiece, but the buildings that are across the street from the theater, between the Union Street and the Kings Road, will be a whole district of buildings with restaurants.
And that's what we're viewing now.
That's exactly what you view now in the model. You have the Richmond building was built in 1912, would be a jazz club, and giving people a place to go have dinner after they leave the theater or before they come to the theater, and just walk along the street and do some light shopping, or just be in an atmosphere that was Jacksonville in the 1920s and the 30s.
What needs to be done at this point? Where are you in terms of getting it all together? You're just about to finish with your first fundraising affair. What needs to be done now?
What we need to do now is we're continuing to raise from the community $2.5 million. We already have begun that, and it's very important for us over the next year and a half to continue to raise those funds to match city and state dollars that are coming to help us renovate the theater. And besides just renovating the theater, we are also working on restoring the buildings that are around the theater so it all can happen at one time.
Again, back to the central point. I can remember as a kid being in the Ritz and around the street there, the Strand and the Roosevelt. But it is something that I think is so special about here that are you going to be able to capture some of the magic of the old days?
We're hoping so. We're hoping so. The magic of the old days are coming back in a lot of ways in terms of fashion, especially in the dance where you see a lot of things that were happening. We're hoping to bring a lot of that back so the people, especially the black community of Jacksonville, have a place to say, that used to be our place. But the community as a whole can be proud of what used to go on down there, and we'll be able to show them. This is the only area of Jacksonville that predates the 1901 fire that's still intact. So I think it's vitally important that we preserve this area and give the community something that they can come to and remember what this community was like in the early 1900s. So I'm sure we can be able to recapture some of the magic that you saw as a child.
Good luck.
Thanks. We'll do it.
If all goes as planned, this 60-year-old landmark and area, the star of them both, will rise once again. I'm Fred Matthews.